from the experiences that I've had personally through the church that I went through, and then I begin to see what God has done in other people's lives in that particular church. That's back in the late 70s, 78, 79, around that time. Those begin to caught my attention. And then somebody gave me a Bible from that church, and I started to get into the Bible and begin to seek God, and then the principle, the life change started to come.
This man is Gerard Morin. He came to the United States as a young child from Jamaica, and in his early years, he was raised by his sister. I spoke to Gerard Morin to understand the nature of his identity. I speak of identity as something that's not just you creating it, but also other people viewing it, right? Perceiving it. And so Gerard told me earlier in his life that some of his friends got beat up by the police. Now, sure, they got beat up for some sort of wrongdoing, but it wasn't just that, right? There was something about the status of these people, whether it's their skin color or maybe the police did have that sort of animosity against, just people who committed crimes. But there was something about the status itself that they held in disgust. And so that's the sort of reaction that manifested. And now those people have a different experience because of their identity. And so this is really what identity does, right? It manifests different experiences for each other, right? For each of us. Because we assume a certain identity, we're probably going to be assuming certain experiences along with it, because other people are going to start seeing us in that sort of way, perceiving us in that sort of way. And so as we continue to learn about Gerard's life story, his biography, right, I hope we could sort of understand just the nature of identity and how his identity affected his life experiences.
Did you ever go through any struggles that you now feel grateful for? Awesome.
Yeah, financially, because I came to America 7 years old. My sister was living in a one-bedroom apartment. I was also living in that one room along with my brother because our parents died, so she basically raised us. She's nearly 14 years older than me, 10 years older than my brother. So that was a lot of struggle for her to try to help us to go to school. Her being the oldest, our sister, trying to get us to go to school. It was a struggle. It wasn't easy. We didn't have the finance. So obviously, in one bedroom, 3 people living in, but that's how our life started. That was a struggle. We had other struggles, but yes, I'm grateful because now it teaches me and helped me to be appreciative of everything that I have.
Very cool.
Even if it's not much to some people, it's a lot to me.
Yes, sir.
Who I didn't like at that time, I used to actually be prejudiced. He's the one who God used to approach me and begin to tell me about Jesus Christ. That's how I got it. It's very long, but that's as short as I can put it.
Right. Have you ever had any sort of affinity for Malcolm X? Have you ever thought long and deep about him as a figure?
No. Only on the teachings. One of the reasons, if I back up a little bit, notice I used to be prejudiced. The group that I was in used to teach this doctrine where the white man was the devil.
Right.
And of course they used things from slavery, different things to try to get you to see it in that manner. Not understanding it was a spiritual demon. So I didn't understand about the spiritual life. So obviously I began to believe in those doctrines.
Right.
Just some context on the group he was in. It's called the 5% Nation. It was started by Allah the Father, who was previously known as Clarence 13X, and before that, Clarence Edward Smith. They believed themselves to be gods and creators of the white men, who rebelled against them.
Right. Did you feel any sort of prejudice while you were in?
Well, yes, it obviously developed a prejudice against color, black and white.
Did you ever feel any prejudice or discrimination when you were doing any sort of job searches that may have led you down this path?
I had discrimination from school, which I won't go too much in depth. When I got into high school, a predominantly white school, I went there because of the better education.
Right.
I was able to learn very fast, and I was able to graduate before the whole 4 years, and I knew that. when I went to my grade advisor, I asked her, and I knew how prejudiced the school were till this very day. This is back in 1978, 79. 78, I believe. I even asked her to sign a paper that if I pass all my classes, I tell her, give me all the classes I need so I can graduate in the 11th grade.
Yeah.
Because I had enough credit, but I didn't have all the classes that was needed.
Oh.
So she said, well, you can't have all these classes, it's too much. I said, well, then I'll go to night school. Back in those days, this was possible. I don't know if it is today. So she gave me all the night school that I needed, the 8 term of English, I'm sorry, everything but the 1 term of English. That last term I needed. So I made her sign a paper said Gerard Morin will graduate if he passed all his classes. What she did, maybe she didn't do it with intention, but because of the prejudice that I've experienced, I put it on that. Because I know she knew better, so she supposed to have given me all the classes that was necessary to graduate. So at the end of my 11th year, I said, why am I not graduating? Why am I going to the 12th grade? I passed all the classes. She said, oh, you did not have English 8. Well, she should have given me that. I believe it was because of prejudice, because of I knew how some of the kids in my color, black, would go through this situation.
Right.
And this is why I actually asked a person to give me a note, which is on 2023. I still have that note.
Gerard Morin is now a retired car mechanic, and he helps out at his local church. And he'll talk about why he does it right here.
You're involved with the NTC church now, more involved ever, probably, you're working in the ministry here, helping out with the tech. How'd you become involved, actively with this church, even though you live all the way in St. Pete, live a bit away?
Well, the teachings, the sincerity, most of all from the ministers, you can tell they're very sincere. Even though there are many churches, I'm not knocking any other churches down. Some I would. But the sincerity through prayer, when actually I first learned about New Testament church in New York City, back in the early days, like I said, through that Jewish guy. When I moved to Florida, they didn't have New Testament churches.
Right.
So, and I couldn't find a church that was helping me to continue my Christian walk. I was new in it, and I messed up for over 20 years. When I did cry out to God, I found myself right back to this New Testament church. So from there is why I find it to be a privilege to travel 2 hours to come. And whenever we go through a lot of hardship, obviously that causes us to cry out to God. In my situation, like I explained earlier, I was going through certain hardship. What I was going through, it was internal, nothing outward. I didn't have financial issues, which some people consider hardship. Yes, to find a verse that best describes is, I think of the verse that says for us to be careful when we are in what's called a lukewarm state, which means we're not totally surrendering to God and on fire for God, and we're not totally abandoning Him. I find myself in a struggle between the two, like lukewarm, I'm more laid back now.
Yeah.
So this verse right now describes me, but the good thing is God is not looking for us to stay in our state. Just like any father does not want their kid to stay in a certain state, they know the plan they have for their kids. I know my Father, God, has a plan for me.
Right.
I'm relying on that, and I'm hoping I'm not abusing His grace. I know through His grace, He's going to bring me to where He put in my heart where I need to be. I know I'm not where I'm supposed to be, but I am fighting to reach the mark that He has set for me.
All right. Thank you for listening to the interview, and I hope you found this interesting, right? I think it's very important to talk to people and understand their stories, right? Even if you don't necessarily agree with them. And I think it's very important in our society to become more empathetic, right? Not that we need to agree with the other person's standpoint, but just to understand where they're coming from. And that's why we all need to share our stories as well as listen to other people's stories, right? For we cannot but speak of what we have seen. But yeah, I hope this is inspiring. I hope you go out there and share your story, your biography, your testimony with other people so that they also, too, can know what you believe, what you understand, and become empathetic to your beliefs.